Malik Willis, who is coming out of Liberty by way of Auburn, obviously 6'1", 219 pounds. He's 22 years old. Interestingly, he was the second highest graded draft eligible quarterback on 20-plus yard passes this past year per PFF. Just behind one of your favorites, by the way, Bailey Zappi, but we won't talk about him too much. A really toolsy kid, right? Like, I think for fantasy, Malik Willis is going to be everybody's kryptonite because we love ceiling in fantasy. We love the what-its. We don't have tolerance or patience for floor. We want to imagine the rushing stats that this kid is going to put up. And, I mean, I'm going to get ahead of myself. Like, there is a lot of Jalen Hurts in Willis's game. I think he's basically like a bionic armed Jalen Hurts. And if you know what Jalen Hurts, despite what he did not do as a passer, did for points in fantasy, like Willis becomes absolute, I don't, maybe he's pyrite or maybe he's real gold.
One way or another, he's got some value. I think you're right. I mean, for a kid to rush for 800, 900 yards each of the past two seasons, 12 and 13 touchdowns. I forget the exact numbers, but big rushing numbers. And in college football, they take the sack yardage off. And guess what? Malik Willis took a lot of sacks. So, he can roll. I mean, this is a guy with speed, but also power too. I mean, he's built more like a power running back. I mean, he's got like a Dalvin Cook build or whatever. So, it's impressive. I wasn't sure. I kept watching the tape during the fall and thinking, is he going to be able to turn the corner? Is he going to be elusive enough? Or is he going to have some limitations as a runner? I feel less worried about that now. I think that his legs are going to be a huge part of his game. He's got, bendy ankles and great body control and things like that. And oh, by the way, he's got a howitzer for an arm. As you mentioned, the deep passing is a big part of what they did. Some of it was schemed up, but then again, he was playing with a bad offensive line. His go-to receiver was a redshirt freshman. There were some things that hurt him. There were also things that helped him, like the system of Hugh Freeze and whatnot. So, there's just a lot to process with Willis. But from a fantasy perspective, the moment he gets in the lineup, and that could be as a 1 or 2 package a game guy. It's at first a starter eventually. Who knows? He's going to have fantasy relevancy right away.
Is there any concern or doubt about his ability to mature, since we're both saying that he's a bit of a project, right? He's kind of raw. Is there a lot of concern about the fact that he came from Liberty, right? This isn't an LSU product or a Clemson or an Alabama product, and that the level of competition, it seems like we dismissed all of it last year when Zach Willis came out, right? Or Wilson?
Wilson, yeah.
It seems like we dismissed all of that when Zach Wilson came out, despite the fact that Brigham Young was like not the same, right? Well, people kind of said it, but like, those off-platform throws. I'm not hearing the same. It feels like the discrepancy between those two conversations is vast when we're having the same talk about Willis.
Yeah, it's fair to bring up because, obviously I would say BYU's schedule in 2020 was far weaker than what Liberty played this year. At Syracuse, at Ole Miss, some other pretty competitive games there, the bowl game and whatnot. He was the MVP of that one. I would say they played a tougher schedule. Now, did Willis always elevate his game on those big platforms? No, the Ole Miss tape was pretty ugly. He didn't get a lot of help, but, he walked into some traps himself. Syracuse, it was another, his timing and his sense to when to throw the ball, when to get rid of it, et cetera, has got to speed up. He was like Hurts in college, who had a great offensive lineman in front of him, holds on to the ball way too long, is tough in that regard, but some of that timing has got to speed up. So, but yeah, I would say that the questions in comparison to Zach Wilson are fair to raise, and whether it's equitable or not, because Wilson was throwing sidearm passes against Boise State in one of their worst defensive years in recent memory, against Utah State. You know what I mean? It just wasn't the same level of competition that the Jets faced this year, and it showed.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. So I wanted to ask your professional opinion on it. I also want to ask you, not where you necessarily think he's going to go, right? But where you want him to go. Where do you think he could land that would best help his career and his maturation into the pros.
Yeah, I would love to see him land in Pittsburgh. I don't know that it happens, and I don't know that the Steelers are wanting to do another, Devin Bush type of trade where they move that high up to get somebody. Maybe they do, and it's Kevin Colbert's final draft. They could go like the Ravens did with Ozzie Newsome, kind of the legacy pick, if you will, with Lamar Jackson. It wouldn't shock me, but they've got some room to move up. They probably have to feel comfortable doing so ahead of number 6 of Carolina. If he were to fall past that point, different discussion. So Pittsburgh still makes the most sense, though. As you pointed out, Trubisky, it's not like we're talking about, somebody who's irreplaceable as a starter. And, rest in peace to Dwayne Haskins. You hate to say it in these terms, but they're a quarterback short. And Mike Tomlin at the Senior Bowl, just being up front, I got to sit on the far side of the stands where a lot of the coaches were. He was waiting to be the first guy to talk to Willis after that first practice, which Willis was very impressive down in Mobile. And, it was like, all right, I'm going to talk to this guy and I'm going to be the first guy to grab him off the field. So the Steelers have done a lot of work on Ritter. They've done a lot of work on Willis. I think one of them ends up in Pittsburgh.